Welcome everyone. Welcome to our Learning Lab today. My name's Mike Sams. I'm one of the consultants with Reach Australia. And what we're doing today is following on from our conference where we express our passion to see more and more churches, healthy evangelistic churches, growing to reach the lost in Australia. After our conference, we thought, why don't we think about different things to help us wrestle with how we can grow churches and grow healthy churches across our country. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to have two sessions of 10-minute hearing from Liam, who I introduce in a moment, and then we'll have 10-minute question time, and we'll do that twice, and then we'll wrap up at the end and let you know about upcoming Learning Labs as well. So Liam Doyle is speaking to us today. He's going to be speaking on, hopefully you know, but speaking on mission in small churches. And Liam's at Lake Mac in New South Wales. And so I'm going to hand over to him and he's going to give us his first reflections on that. Thanks, Liam.
Thanks, Mike. So as he said, I'm Liam. My wife and I planted a church at Lake Macquarie, just below Newcastle, about 8 years ago. So that's a big step. So we're a relatively new church. We've grown steadily over that time. At the moment we're seeing about 100 adults and kids on a Sunday, and that's as big as we've been. So that's when we think mission in a small church. That's been our context, from 9 people when we kicked off to kind of 100 on a Sunday now. So that's where we've come from. And today, so as Mike said, I've got a couple of thoughts. There's so much to do. So many things we could be talking about, and really this is just some of what I've learned, some of my experience. There's probably better ways to do it, but hopefully what we've got is helpful. And as Mike said, there is a question time, so we're going to do just that. I'll do about 10 minutes and then we will stop for a good chunk of Q&A. You can get those questions in as we're going by typing them in, and Mike will pick those up and we'll feed those back in question time. So please, that discussion I think is probably going to be where it's most helpful. But of all the things we could be talking about mission, the two things I really want to dig into is, I reckon the two thoughts that are going to be most helpful are, the first one is that we should be pastoring our people in mission, shepherding them to do mission and helping them to do that. And I'll do that in the first chunk. And then we'll be looking at sort of events, so which I'd say is providing intentional opportunities to move people towards faith. And that's in a context. So we've never run a Summerfest big whiz bang holiday program. Maybe we couldn't. Maybe we just didn't want to. We're not big enough to run back-to-back mission courses. So that's the question. What can I do? And I think those two big things are what we can do. So the first one, pastoring your people in mission. It kind of shouldn't have to be said, but it does. Is people, they really need help. We all do. Some people are born evangelists. There's those odd people that we come off from time to time where they just can't help. We've got one of the guys at church. His conversations in Bunnings with the Bunnings staff blow my mind, but we've got one of them and they're not going to come along every day. Most of our people need help. And we know that biblically, don't we? That we do, God does gift some specially to be evangelists, yet the whole church is called to be on mission. That Ephesians 4, that the evangelist, one of their job is to build the whole church up, not to do the evangelism, but to build the whole church up. And so that means, for us, we don't want to play off relational evangelism against event evangelism. You might have heard the sort of debates, are we into relational, are we into event evangelism? Well, look, I think we need both. So especially relational, we need to invest in our people, so it's not the church does the mission sort of attitude amongst the congregation. We've got to train our people to be the missionaries. They're in the area, they're in the workforce, they're in the schools. So we need to build and invest them to be building relationships, to be investing in the community. But we also need to be building them to be able to both share the gospel and bring people to an event, I believe, where they can, their friend, their colleague, their family member can hear the gospel explained. Some people will be able to be trained to share the gospel in such a way that will lead to conversions. A bunch of people can get that. There's some good training courses out there. But I think we need to recognise there'll be a lot of people who might never get there And we got to embrace that, Jesus says, hey, our church is a body. We're not all ears, we're not all mouths, we don't all have the same gift. And so to put that kind of pressure on everyone in our congregation that you need to be able to convert someone in a conversation, I actually think it's a little bit unfair. So not everyone might be able to be brought to that place, but I do believe that we can pastor pretty well everyone in our congregation to be a good friend and a good inviter. So that's kind of the sort of heart of it. Now, when it comes to how do you train people to do that, we run some courses through home groups to do that. One that we've sort of written around some of Sam Chan's material. You might have come across him. He does a bunch of stuff with Geneva Push, who works for City Bible Forum here in Sydney. But he's got a great new book called How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy. We've got an adaptation of that book that we run as a 5-week course, which we call Unawkwarding Jesus, which is really just to help people start talking about Jesus, building relationships to a point where they can start talking about faith and getting to the point where they can bring someone along to an event or to church. But I don't think we should just assume that that's going to happen. Not everyone, it doesn't come naturally to everyone to just drop faith, to drop Jesus straight into a conversation. So in the Sam Chan content we run it, we look at merging universes, about introducing your Christian friends to your non-Christian friends. Something as simple as saying, hey, if you're going to go to the movies with your Christian mates, why not invite a few of your non-Christian friends along, and vice versa. And that's actually been surprisingly quite revolutionary for a bunch of our people. It should seem obvious to do social stuff with our Christian and non-Christian friends together. But until it's said, I think a lot of people go, oh, wow, that actually is really, really simple. Just the last time we ran it, we had a lady say, I've always been terrified of evangelism. When the pastor sort of points at me and say, you've got to evangelise, she sort of shrink into a seat, but she's like, oh, look, after this, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can have coffee with people. I can be a good friend. I can invest in people and invite them along to something. Yeah, I can have a crack at that. So thoroughly recommend that book. And if you're in this Learning Lab, send an email in if you want access to that little course that we run. It's not fancy. I'll make sure you get emailed a PDF for that one as well. So that's the first thing to be, I think, pastoring your people, shepherding them to be doing mission, is to training them. The next bit is to be building a selfless culture. And just to, I guess, give an example of this, we've had both these. So real examples. We ran a mission event, which was Jamberry Nails, which is like a stick-on-nail thing for the ladies. And it was really popular, but from that event, we had one lady who said to me, oh no, I got my nails done last month, so I won't be coming or bringing anyone. And I reckon that really, it really crystallises what would you say, a selfish culture around mission, where a whole bunch of people don't have clarity on what these events are for. They're not actually about you. They're not about your nails. They're about your friend. This isn't about you having a nice time, although we want that. This is about something that your friend might be interested in. And I want to compare that to another lady from our church who's a vegetarian, and she brought 4 friends to our smoked meat night about a month ago. So just that's the poll. She gets it. She gets, oh yeah, this actually isn't about me. This is about what my friends might be interested in. And we say that. So how do you build that culture? I think you've just got to keep saying it. Say it. So when we're up announcing our events, even in the way we do announcements at church, we don't give many of the details from front, just the sort of bare bones. My upfront time is where I can cast vision with that announcement and say, hey, yeah, we're running this meat event. I want to tell you why we're doing it. This one that we just ran a couple of months ago, I said, I actually don't care if you like meat or not. And I called out that lady, I know she's already bringing some friends along. This isn't about whether you like smoked meat. This is about your friends and whether they want to come along. And showing that, hey, this is about us flexing, us changing, us putting aside our preferences for the sake of the outsider, that they might be more easily able to come and experience the Christian community and hear the good news of Jesus. So that's the second one, building a selfless culture. And the third one, and I reckon we'll come back to this at the end, because I think if you do nothing else off the back of this, I'd encourage you to do this, and that is coach your people. Now, this is actually a big advantage in a smaller church. If you've got a larger church and you're thinking, well, how do I build a missional culture? That's a big ship to turn. If you've got a smaller church, either you or someone in your church can basically get around it. And so what I mean is coach, I mean deliberately invest in every one of your people with an eye to mission. So I do this at the moment. I don't do it brilliantly. I don't do it all the time, so it's sporadic. But when it does happen, it seems to work really well. And what I've got is it's pretty simple. I've got a Google sheet, and I've got a list of all the different all the people in our congregation, our regulars, with their name. Next to them, I've got a list of all the friends that I know that they're praying for, that they've brought along to an event, or that they're interested in inviting to something. And I work through that list. And I'll ring them. And it actually doesn't take too much time. It's not a general call, or how you going, tell me all your problems. I flag it right at the start. Hey, I'm calling about mission, about your friends and how we can support you. And so here's a real conversation I had not that long ago with one of our older ladies named Carol. Called her up. Hey, Carol, how you going? I know you were, because I had written down her friend, let's call her Shirley. I noticed you brought Shirley along to something about a year ago. How did she enjoy it? Have a little chat. How have you been catching up with her since then? Oh yeah, you have been catching up with her. Oh, okay, that's great. What do you think the next step for Shirley is? So it's doing that coaching. What do you think the next step for Shirley is? And she goes, and I don't think she's ready for church yet. Oh, okay, that's really interesting, Carol. What might she be ready for? And she'll sort of go, I say, what about the life course we've got running up, or the next evangelistic course? Real example. And she went, you know what? I think I could invite her to that. And I went, oh, great. Okay, can I pray with you, Carol? Yeah, that'd be wonderful. And so we prayed. She called me back literally 5 minutes later, telling me that she'd rung a friend, invited her to life, and she'd said yes. And that wasn't a one-off. That happened again and again and again. And it's amazing when I said, hey, mate, how you going? What about this friend? And I named them. They came along to something. Hey, we've got that thing we've been advertising. It's coming up in a few weeks. Have you invited them? Oh, no, I hadn't. Oh, any reason why not? I just hadn't thought of it. Oh, okay. We've announced it from the front like 40 times. But no, that personal coaching. Oh, could you invite them? Yeah, I think I could. And work through it. So I reckon that's the big one. Always pray with them. Always help them think through a next step. And push them to say, hey, well, what do you think's next for that friend? How can you be investing in them? So that's our first chunk, I guess. Pastoring your people in mission. So we've got some time for some Q&A now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lam. It's very, very helpful. Think about your questions. Type them in, and I'll ask more in a moment. We've got one already come through. One of the guys asked. David's got a helpful question there. Can you suggest any concrete, practical ways to start building a culture of mission in a church that hasn't been missional for a long time? And the context here is a small, aging rural church.
Yeah, okay.
But it's that culture mission question.
Yeah, and this is one I'm not great at. I haven't had experience in, because being a church plant, we're probably not as established in maybe bad cultural habits. Yeah. But I can make a couple of suggestions.
Yeah, go for it.
If you've got even the slightest thing to celebrate it.
Yeah.
So if you get a win with somebody, and it might be not rigged, but if you coach someone through, maybe someone who, hey, they're not particularly interested in getting their nails done, but hey, their friend is, and they invited them, and they bring them along to an event, you drag that person up to the front of church, you interview them at church and celebrate it. So it's that implied rebuke. If you've got an established culture that you think, oh, they are a little bit selfish as opposed to selfless, maybe they won't cope with a more overt rebuke yet. Although I'd encourage you to, sometimes they need that.
Okay.
They're actually going to need hey, this isn't actually about you being comfortable. They need to be called out gently with love, and obviously the deeper the relationship, the more firmly you can do that. But far better would be to drag, for us, Tamika, I'll name her, bring her up the front, and use. Don't say, hey, what was that wonderful thing you did,
Yeah.
Tamika? Don't make her but don't make your interviewee tell everyone how good they are. You say, I've dragged you up because you did this, and this really excited me. So you can talk them up. I know you don't eat meat. I know you love your friends even more than you love not eating meat. And that's great because that's the gospel. And so celebrating that, pray for them, a little bit of an exhortation. I reckon that's one of the more powerful ways of starting to shift that culture to being, celebrating the selfless acts.
People who love Jesus, hearing stories about how Jesus is doing things is always a win. It's just having that focus and clarity on that. I wonder too, there's another question comes through. I wonder too whether fostering the heart of people with the word with a mission focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
So assessing is there an issue of actually people are, while they may be Christians, got a hardness to the mission, or is it that they just need to be excited by the word again and the passion of making disciples and that being compelled, being ambassadors and just seeking in your preaching, your teaching, conversations to foster that? And
again, in a smaller church, you probably haven't got a bigger staff team, which means that sometimes you're the mission guy and the preacher, as I am. So you sometimes can actually have those. Yeah, so we did a sermon series late last year, sort of spiritual health check. And on mission, I think the big application we did was about we want to be the ones who will flex, who will, we don't want to say, oh, well, you've got to jump these barriers if you want to join us. We want to say, no, I'll be willing, it's in a sermon context, I'll be willing to do something I don't prefer if it's going to help this outsider come in and experience Jesus. And really pushing that and you don't have to look far in the Bible to find that kind of attitude.
Yeah, that's right.
Our great Lord's stooping, to do that. So we can frame all this in Scripture and in preaching. Yeah.
Right, got another question here from Rick. How important, successful, have the pre-evangelistic events you've run been for getting people along to church and your intro to Jesus?
Yeah, awesome. Courses? Well, we might save that one for the second chunk because we're actually going to talk about where that fits in. But come back to me on that one, Rick, if I don't satisfactorily answer that in this one.
We'll make sure we do. You don't let it get away with it because that'll be, it's a good question. Is there anything else that people are wondering and thinking about? You feel free to put up your hand and you can ask the question out loud if you'd like.
Okay, we just had one come in there on the right from David.
Yeah. Can you suggest any other ways to build people's conviction for mission other than preaching and growth groups?
Yeah, okay. Conviction for mission other than preaching and growth groups. And they're the obvious ones, aren't they? They're the ones the often platforms that we have. I would be, so recommending good books, I think, are helpful. Getting people into reading accounts. So that's trying to get people's it's imagination stimulated. So especially if you've been, so I grew up in a country town, and at different seasons in my growing up, there's times in the church where it didn't feel like we'd ever seen anyone become a Christian. So there actually is power in sort of giving a snapshot of, hey, this can happen, and it does happen. And it's even better if you can get it as a celebration. So other than preaching and growth group, I think it's that stimulating the imagination, showing what's possible. So the interviews, not just for changing culture, but for little conversations and I guess celebrating even the small wins. So it might be, they got someone along. We interviewed someone a couple of months ago who'd invited, I think, 12 people to an event. And none of them could come for various reasons, but we wanted to celebrate that. So I dragged them up and talked about, hey, how is it that you've got 12 unchurched friends? What does that look like? And sort of celebrated that. And so I think the more we can, it's the celebrating those wins. So when we see, and across the board, not just getting someone to an event, but it's being selfless or investing in relationships. Yes, preaching is helpful. Yes, the courses in growth groups. But I think probably as a motivator, even more emotionally powerful probably is those interviews and almost seeing that in action.
And it's almost thinking through all of these things are playing a part of what is your identity as a church, and putting time and effort into thinking about where am I taking the church, and do they actually know that our vision is to see people become Christians?
Yep.
And how is that going to just infuse into everything you do, into when you're preaching, when you're talking to people, your values, how you go about things, why you're doing them, just becomes part and parcel with focus.
Even the way doing that coaching, those phone calls, some people I'll ring have never brought someone to an event, and I don't know if they're praying for anyone. Yeah. But that conversation, and I've got some people I've rung and they've gone, oh, actually, I don't have any non-Christian friends. Well, I don't have anyone to invite. Oh, rightio. Well, what's my next step if I'm going to be coaching them? Oh, how do you think you could make some non-Christian friends? Is that something we want to change? Yeah, we want to see. So sort of coaching them through in a personal way. Yeah, there's this attitude that we want to foster. What that's going to look like. What's some concrete next steps? And I'll note that into my little spreadsheet. So-and-so doesn't have any friends, planning to start playing bingo, prayerfully hoping they'll meet some people.
Why would you, just push on that, why would you put it into a spreadsheet? It seems a little bit kind of...
Big brothery?
Yeah, I was thinking just more mechanical, but big brothery. Why do you think like that?
Yeah, so I get teased about my spreadsheets a little bit. I like spreadsheets.
Okay.
But I don't have the world's best memory. I can't remember the names of everyone. I can't remember where everyone is up to. So this is probably a little bit of I think for me, a key when I realised this. I got to start treating my church as a block, as a unit, that I've got to move this whole church to be more missional.
Yeah.
No, they're all individuals.
Okay.
They're all individuals. So where you're at in your missional passion, in your relationships, might be chalk and cheese apart from where Carol's at.
Sure.
And I need a spreadsheet to track that. So I haven't gone to the point of giving someone a missional score or something, although that might be a good idea. Or where they are on where I want to see them grow in maturity in this pathway. But those little comments that I write will be, okay, next time I ring so-and-so, okay, I know that they don't, last time we spoke, they didn't have any friends, so I know what to celebrate. So when they say, hey, I've met someone, I can say, hey, we prayed about that 6 months ago, because realistically, I'd love to be doing this every month. I can't. I got other stuff on. It might be 6 months. If I get busy or slack, it might be a year. But having that there, hey, remembering where they're up to, I can celebrate those particular things and help them take the next step for them, because they'll all be different across those,
So it's about intentionality and about you thinking about, praying about, and helping the individual in their walk with Jesus.
And for me, getting that down in writing, it just helps with that intention. It's not a vague, I want to encourage this person. It's a no, I specifically want to help them make this step.
Great. All right, what we'll do, actually, we might hold that, and that'll be our first question about friendships when we get back. We might jump. Thank you for that question, Tony. We'll hear about events.
Yeah, sure.
Share about
and
that.
Then we'll come back into question time.
Come back into question time. Keep it coming through, and we'll kick off with the friendship one after.
Fantastic. Now, this second chunk, I did say it's about events, but I've written a little sentence that I think it helps frame that a bit better. And that is, so we want to pastor our people in mission, first chunk. Second, we want to provide intentional opportunities to move people towards faith. So as a church, as a pastor, as someone who maybe has more evangelistic sensitivity, who knows, our job is to help engage people's friends, their contacts, in ways that they might not be able to do as easily. But first, we just got to come back to talking about outcomes. So it's just so regular, and we've even slipped into it over times. Running events without outcomes, you can just end up patting yourself on the back saying, oh, isn't that great? We ran a gingerbread house making day. We had 150 people. Woo! We ran a good event, and the input becomes the celebration. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve with that event, there is no way of measuring whether it was a success. So you get 150 people along to a gingerbread house, but only 5 of them were unbelievers. Wow, that is a lot of input in a very big event. If the outcome was actually to connect unbelievers with church, hey, we've missed something here. We haven't done a great job at connecting people. On the other side of this, we just as COVID was reopening, we had restrictions in our venue. We could only have 90 people, so we ran this smoky barbecue. I had 50 unbelievers RSVP to coming along, which was really exciting because people had been bringing 2 or 3 or 4 friends. But that meant I could only fit legally 40 Christians in the room. Now you might be thinking, fantastic, what a great event with all those unbelievers there. The problem was they weren't welcomed in by Christians. So one of our goals for that event was actually to expose unbelievers to the Christian community so that they could meet some other Christians and realise, it's not just my one weird friend Jim who's a Christian. I got to sit at a table with 6 of Jim's Christian friends. That's the ideal, I reckon, for those events, is that, this was so that the goals of that, and so in a way, that event failed. We had heaps of non-Christians there, and they all had a good time, so I think it succeeded to a point. But because the outcome was actually, we want to help them meet other Christians, I should have kept the, leave number at 30 so that we could have 60 Christians there. There'd be 2 Christians every non-Christian, so that they could meet some other Christians. So we've got to be thinking outcomes for everything we do. So we've got to have our eye to outcomes. And the way we think about our events across a year, again, being a small church, we can't run 60 events. We've got to pick pretty carefully. But I want to think of events as entry points, either into faith or into exposure to the Christian community or to Jesus. And recognising that my different friends, or our congregation's unchurched friends, are going to be at different levels of what they're ready to experience. Some of them will be ready to commit to a 7-week Christianity Explored course. Fantastic. Let's make sure we run that course so that they'll be in. Other people say, no, there's no way I'm signing up to anything for multiple weeks. But I might turn up at church for an interesting topical sermon. And other people say, no way am I going to church. I'm not going to darken the door. But I might come to an event, like one we run, which is a How to Butcher a Sheep one, where there's a pretty intense talk about death. Hey, I might be ready to come to that where, hey, it's not church, but I'm going to hear a bit of a talk. Other friends might be so anti-church or anti-religion that, hey, they're not even ready for an event where there'll be a talk. But they might be ready to have a meal with me, or they might be ready to come to a social event where there's not really much overt. So that's what we think. We think across our events, I want to provide for the whole spectrum, or as many as we can, the whole spectrum of where our different friends might be, so that wherever they are at, we can provide a plug-in point for them to just start to enter into the Christian community and into the good news of Jesus, and move, one step to the right. It would be some language, the vine growers, or further down the funnel, or along that pathway. So we want there to be an outcome for them to move, but we also want to make sure that we haven't just got one entry point for them, and make sure that there's different levels to that bar. So we often we talk about it a little bit like a funnel or a pathway. There's a lot of talk about the sort of mission funnel. So you have so the way we describe it is we use the C's, the Stuart Starr. I don't know if he coined them, but I borrowed them from him. So connect, care, communicate, commit, the 4 C's. So we'll run events that are either a 1C, 2C, 3C or 4C event. We generally only run 2C events. So Connect Care event would be like our smoky barbecue night. We run a family event, so all ages. We put on a whole slather of amazing food, and really the only thing we say gospelly at that from the front is that things like smoked brisket and bacon are little tastes of heaven. They're little tastes of God's love for us. It's like the ice cream taste scoop at the gelatissimo. It's not really the ice cream; it's just the taste. So if you think brisket's good, you come along to church. You come and check out Jesus, and you'll find he's got so many more amazing things in being part of his family. So come check it out. And that's the input, because the goals for that event, it's 2C. We want to connect with people and we want to care for them. So the goal for that event, very clear. We want people to feel more connected with the church community, more comfortable, and to have felt loved by the Christian community. Now, if that was all we ran missionally, that's a big jump there from there to committing to a course. But that's a 2C event. A 3C event would be, for example, a butchery event. we run, where we show people how to chop up a sheep, talk about the reality of death, really push people, hey, you need to check out Jesus. So we've communicated, you are going to die, there is judgment coming at that, and the best way to deal, well, the only way to deal with that is to come to Jesus. So it's not a full-blown gospel presentation, but there is communication. So that's a 3C event. So it's sort of stepping it up. And then the full sort of 4C, which would be connect, care, communicate, and commit, would be, say, a life series where the gospel's explained, I think, in enough detail where we could feasibly call someone to commit to Jesus, to make a decision. And so, that's the funnel. You've got the broad catch, 2C, it gets a bit narrower, 3C, and then it's narrow again as you get to your 4C. But having said that it's a funnel, I reckon it's more like a coin spinner in reality. So the ones in the supermarket, usually raising money for the guide dogs or something, where kids put their coins in and they run around and around and around and around. That's the way we've seen mission work more often than people going, yep, I came to this event, then I came to this event, then I came to this event, then I became a Christian. We're actually seeing people cycle around. So some people, that has been their trajectory. They've come to we've got a lady who's she's a Christian, she's in one of my home groups. Her first taste was I think it was a dessert night, then she signed up for life, then she became a Christian, started going to church somewhere in there. How exciting is that? Boom, 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 that's the dream. But in reality, often it's cycling. So someone is so far from the gospel and from church, they're going to have to go to a few of these 2C events. They're going around. Now, I say coin spinner because hopefully they are coming down the funnel. Hopefully they are coming a bit closer, but it might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 connecting events before they step into the next one. And depending on the size of your church and your capacity to how many to run those, that might be over a number of years. That they're just slowly connecting into the Christian community, and then eventually, oh yeah, I am ready to check out this. So that's the way I think about it, the coin spinner. How to do events, and please ask some questions on this. But I reckon the big thing you want to have running around your head when you think about things to invite unbelievers to is do less of them and do them well. And do your utmost to never run a dud event. And I don't think I can stress this enough. So when I was in Orange, I brought my dad along to an event who is an unbeliever, and he doesn't come to anything. And I finally got him to an event, and it wasn't good. And I reckon it took 5 years to undo the damage that event did. And I tell you what, I'm still struggling. I've forgiven the speaker in my heart, but I remember that, and I'm still struggling to kind of get over that. Now, you can imagine what that's going to do to the trust of your people if they have put their relationships on the line. Maybe it's family, maybe it's friends, brought them along to an event, and it just didn't hit the mark. You have lost years of traction. And it's going to take a whole lot of work to get them to trust you enough to risk another relationship with something you're going to put on. And their unbelieving friend, they might be turned off. How terrible to be turned off by the gospel for something that's tasteless or that just wasn't run well enough. And when I say run well, it doesn't have to be professional. I'm not saying it has to be smooth or slick or bigger than Ben-Hur, but to your capacity. Run less, run them better, do them as best you can. For example, for us, so we run the Life series. So we run it as a 5-week series as a kind of pre-Christianity Explored. That's where it fits into our funnel, if you like. When we first launched the Life series, I reckon we were averaging about 60 people, including kids, at church. And we don't have other churches locally that we could partner with to sort of do a nice big series together. So there was a bit of vibe in the room. Actually had that advice from someone, hey, partner with some other local churches. I went, I can't partner with them to do this. This isn't going to work. So what we did instead was we cancelled home groups for 5 weeks. And we had pushback from that. But we cancelled home groups and said, you are not allowed to have your small groups. Instead, we want you at Life. And if you can't make Life, we had groups say, we'd rather just run small group instead of Life. I went, sorry, You're not allowed because this is something we're all on about. And I didn't just say that from the front. I went and had conversations. But that was an opportunity to push people who have been a bit selfish and give them that personal nudge and gentle rebuke that, hey, why is it that you're not willing to do this? And that did a couple of things. I think we probably only had 2 non-Christians at that first live series. But we would have had nearly 40 adults there. And the non-Christians, it wasn't like there was a clear badge who was a Christian, who wasn't. So there were 40 people in the room for this live series. It felt fantastic. In reality, almost every adult in our church was there. The only ones who weren't was the ones who were home with the kids. And that was great. The other thing that did, and if you've got a series that you're convinced of, that you're struggling to get traction for your people, is invite them to come and give them permission to come without bringing a friend. So we said that, hey, you come along for this series, find it out. Hopefully you'll be so convinced by it that you'll say, I wish I brought my friend. I want to bring them back next time. So that's where we're at with the events. And looks like we're going to be running question time now. As you come out, Mike, probably church is the other one. Church could be your biggest missional asset. If you're a small church and you don't have the capacity to run a whole lot of events, a few tweaks to church and making church missional, I reckon we've seen just as many, if not more, people converted through the ministry of church than we have through the events that we run. And the tweaks are stuff like, tell people where the toilets are and you're welcome. Yeah. Don't assume that everyone in the congregation has been there before. And the more we talk about as if, even if you're looking across, you're like, there's no visitors here. Talk as if they're visitors. Yeah. Explain what you mean. And people go, I wish I brought Tom along this week. I wish I'd invited him on. They start thinking that, they'll eventually invite Tom. Apply your sermon not just to the Christians and say, and if you're not a Christian here today, before you need to think about whatever that application, you need to explore the reality of talk to it as if there's non-Christians in the room, and church can become a real powerhouse for mission in a small church. Yeah, that's really helpful, not to be just assume you're doing that and to be intentional about what would it be like for a non-Christian to hear that talk. It's a really helpful question. Excellent, that's great stuff. Thank you for that, really appreciate it. Why don't we go back to the question Tony brought up? Because I was wondering as well, you talked a lot about events. Yes. And inviting people, and often it's your friends that you can invite. Well, that's a starting point at least. I was thinking about, well, what do you mean by a good friend? Tony's just even clarified it even better. Are there specific ways you can encourage people to build friendships? Absolutely. So, sorry to keep going on about Sam Chan, but I reckon he's a bit of a dynamo on this stuff. And so one of the steps in his training material is you go to their things. Yeah. So I'm not a good friend if I never ask you how you're going. So that's the first one. Listen to them. Yeah. And if I'm only saying I want you to come to what I'm interested in, but I'm not interested in what you're interested in. Yeah. Okay. So and we actually provide that kind of training, which we don't call it basic friendship 101. That'd be a little bit patronising. Sure. But it's just how to talk to your friends about Jesus. Well, the first one is listen to them. And I guarantee if I say, for half an hour I'm saying, hey, how was your day? What do you do? Tell me about your family. And I'm asking you, hey, what do you believe? And they're talking and talking and talking for half an hour. There are social rules, written or unwritten. There's social rules, and one of the social rules is if someone's asked you lots of questions, you reciprocate. I've asked you for half an hour and I've been genuinely interested. Eventually I'll say, you're feeling really loved, you're feeling really cared for. You go, thanks for that, Liam. Hey, what about you? What do you believe? And it comes back. So just listening, being generally interested, and go to their stuff. If you've never been to their grandkids, recital, or popped down to watch them when they're playing rugby on the weekend, or gone to a concert with them, or gone to the bar with them, or just gone to there's certain things we wouldn't do as Christians with them, but there's a lot of things we can, and that's if you haven't got anyone, you've got to work out, well, where will I meet them? And it might be neighbours, it might be bingo, it might be some sort of social activity. Then it's, well, how do I invest in a friendship? And it's very practical. Listen to them, be a good listener. Well, they say the best conversationalists talk about 10% of the time. So you do a little survey of your people and say, hey, okay, I want you to name the best conversationalists in church, and you'll end up with like 10 names that are sort of common, and you watch them, and those people will all be listeners. Okay. Because that's people we enjoy talking to are the people we feel heard by. So that's just a little bit of training that we can give our people is listen. Don't walk into a conversation thinking, oh, I need to tell them about Jesus. Walk into a conversation thinking, I want to care for them. I want to listen to them. I want to find out where they're at. And I want to find out what they believe. So one of my favourite questions at the moment is, did you grow up with a faith in your household? So it's not about your faith.
Yeah.
It's kind of about your parents' faith. Oh, did you grow up with a household with faith? So it's not too intense.
Yeah.
Actually, and whatever it is, I'm Buddhist. Wow, that's fascinating. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we're talking about faith. And eventually, it'll come back to my faith. It might take 2 or 3 conversations, but I'll get an opportunity at some point.
Yeah,
okay. So I think there are very specific things we can do with some of that material. And email me. I'd love to send you our course. It's, as I said, pretty hashed together, but it might give you something you can work with to help.
Yeah.
Train.
Excellent, great, thanks for that. Here's a really helpful, challenging question. What advice would you give to someone getting mission started from nothing? Example, how did you start when you had 10 to 20 people? What's a good, realistic place to start? And what would be some mistakes to avoid?
Yeah, that's going back, isn't it? 10 to 20 people at church. So that's where we started. We started with 12 people, including kids. One of the you can mission a church into existence. One person on the street, meeting people, converting them.
Yep.
That you can do that. But I think more often a different technique, not necessarily better, but a different technique, is to actually gather resources to do the mission.
Right.
So don't build a tower when you've got no wood. Gather the wood first. The Christians are the wood. So when I was 10 people. When we were 10 people, I spent a lot of time on the phone to other Christians who might know somebody in my area who was de-churched or who I could convince to come and join us for church. So right at the start, some of the best things we can do is just build those resources, but also start doing mission right from day dot. And that would be, okay, it's small. Our church might not be great.
Yeah.
We might not even have any musos yet. It might be a meeting in a lounge room, so maybe church isn't missional. But what could we do? Well, we could have a Good Friday dinner at our place, and go down to the local butcher, hire a spit roast, put on probably a lamb rather than a pig on Good Friday. We've done both. We're Gentiles. It's great. And tell your people to invite their friends. Just say, hey, we're going to have a Good Friday barbecue. Bring your friends around. And so that's that it can be small, but if it's done well and clear outcomes. So what would be the outcome of that? We want people to be exposed to the Christian community, to feel loved and feel like we've been generous. Fantastic. And then you might do a little talk and just to give a little demystifying of, why are we eating lamb, not fish? If that's your context. So to be start small. The other thing is there are some fantastic courses out there that enable for good small group courses. So we love the Christianity Discipleship Explored material coming out of the UK. I think it comes out of the UK. Rico Tyson and co.
What's it called again?
Christianity Explored
Yep.
and Discipleship Explored. They've even got one called Life Explored.
Okay.
They've done some really good work. It's quite high quality filming. It's engaging. And I can run that with so if I'm running a course where I'm standing up the front and there's only 2 other people there, so I stand up the front, give the content, that's weird for a start.
Yeah.
And then I sit back down and say, well, what do you think of that content that I just gave? What a conversation killer. Yeah. Whereas if we're sitting together, 3 of us on a couch, watching, say, Rico Tice on the screen, and say, wow, that was pretty confronting, was it? What do you think of what Rico said? Yeah. So you've got some other pointing head to talk to, and facilitate, and then, we can facilitate that discussion. So, there's some great resources out there. Make the most of them.
Yeah, great, excellent. Going back to Rick had that pre-evangelistic question. How successful have you found them? How important have they been with your
Bringing
mission funnel coin spinner? Was that what you called it? Coin
spinner.
Yeah,
that's
good.
I like that. I'm going to coin that phrase.
Yeah, brilliant.
I good if they're done intentionally. So we've run some that have been very successful, and we've run some that haven't been so successful. And then we've run some that I don't know if we're able to measure it yet because the people who've been involved in them are still on like a slow loop.
Right, yeah.
So, so we've got some people who are kind of floating. and have been to a few, and I've got my eye on them. And because of my spreadsheet,
Yeah.
I know who they are. We're not just going to forget about them. And the person who invited them last time, I'm going to make sure that person gets a phone call before the next event to say, how is Rick? You know, he came to 3 of these events. Where do you think he's at? You know, let's invite him to another one. So sometimes it's hard to tell, especially with our changing culture where people are further back from the gospel. They're not sure if there's a God. They know nothing about Jesus.
Yeah.
So we actually, and all they hear on the news about church is bad. So we've got to demystify Christians. We've got to demystify the Christian community a little bit. So I think there's a lot to be done there. Others, you're really successful. I think the best ones we've done are where we've had a very clear next step, and I or their friend, even better, their friend, has personally followed them up.
Okay.
So running say the butchery night, for instance, because that's 3C, so they've had a challenge. So I sort of end that night with hey, if you haven't checked out Jesus with your adult brain, you owe it to yourself.
Yeah.
You should do this. Give yourself the 5 weeks of life to check this out. And then either on the night, I'll have someone coming around with the invites, or make sure their friend follows them up with an invite. Hey, what did you think about what Liam said at that night? Would you come along to life? So it works if you've got all the pieces in place.
Okay, and so the pieces in place, to clarify, you said next steps there.
Yep.
I don't want to just bypass that.
No, it's
How next steps in themselves, while it's not an event,
Yep.
it almost functions like one in the funnel or the coin
Yep.
spinner. How important is it that you pay attention to next steps?
Very. Really, and I think that's helpful to say. It might not be an event.
Yeah.
So we've recently brought in as a trial. Twice a year we're going to do a easy access sermon series. So 3 sermons, one around Easter, just before, some around spring, where the titles are a little bit more attractive and a little bit easier access. I've held off that for a while because I don't want to communicate in any way that don't bring your friends to church normally. You can only bring them on the invite services. That's the main reason I haven't done that before. We've tried to make all of church missional. But what we've realised is for some people, it's easier to commit to coming to church once than to sign up for a 5-week course. Actually, that might be for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You want me to come to like a series and like it'll be intense and I'll have people asking me questions? Well, compared to that, I'll come to church once and sit up the back and just listen.
Yeah.
That feels
Not be interacting.
But it's having an event without something to invite the people to. I don't want to say it's useless because it's not, especially if the goal is to give them exposure to the Christian community. But there will be people there who are listening out for, hey, I want some more of this. This was a great night. Where can I get more of this? So even if it's hey, we hope you had a great night tonight, and we'd love to see you at church sometime. Come along, it's here every Sunday. Yeah. That could be the next step. Or in 2 weeks' time, we're starting this series. And I'll sometimes do things like, so the smoky meat night, if we've got a next step, I'll print out a recipe for my dry rub that we used on the brisket.
Yeah.
And then on the back of that, I'll put the invite to the sermon series or the life course. And I'll say, hey, I've been really sneaky, everyone. I'll say, I've been really sneaky. Yeah. And you can only have a recipe if you accept the invite. And so just being a little bit self-depreciating.
Yeah.
But here you go. Saying, here's the next step. But when it's intentional, and I would say when it's intentional by the person who invited them, far more powerful. Kent following up his friend who he's brought along the next week and say, hey, thanks for coming along to that event. I hope you enjoyed it. What did you think about what Liam said? That is going to be far more powerful as a follow-up than me going to see that person on the night. I should still do that if I can, but if I can actually have pastored my people through this process, and I don't necessarily need Kent to be so competent that he can convert someone in a conversation. I want to help him do that if he can. But if he's willing to say, what did you think? Would you come along to church?
So that means all your people in church need to know what the next step is for the friend that they bring and be able to actually try and invite them to that. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's the goal. You can do that by broad scale announcements. But in my view, the coaching's the key, the personal phone call. And that's been our experience, the amount of times it's a little bit discouraging. You think, oh, do you listen to anything I say from the front?
Sure.
But then they go, oh yeah, he did come to that 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I reckon he would say yes to life.
Yeah.
You know, so get in there.
Yeah, and that question about if you're starting with 10 to 20 people, that can be how you create a culture of next steps from them. That 10, 20 people will always know what's next, and if they don't, then you've got to figure that out and push into it.
I did this, so I lead a home group. I can't leave all the home groups, but I did this last night with our home group as one of the girls was sharing about something that was going on, and a friend, and I sort of said, oh, hey, what do you think the next step is for her? We sort of talked that through. You can do that in a home group. You can do that when you got 10, when you got 20, when you got 30. And when you get bigger, we need a team of people to keep doing that, I think. It's just that's the next challenge, which isn't in this this session. So, yeah.
That's great. Does anyone want to put up their hand and ask a final question before we wrap up? And we'll get you to share your mission stuff with your emails there. So email Liam and he'll forward that to you. Does anyone put their hand up? And thanks, Tony. Yeah.
Can you just repeat again? The cycle that you do, like you say, you do life, and then you do a.
Sure. What is our funnel? Is that the question?
Yeah. What is your cycle? And also, we quite get a lot of, we can get people to life courses and things like that. It's just the next step of getting them to church that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you any advice on that?
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. And that's I reckon the transitions are the hardest bit. So wonderful, you're getting people life courses. You've got access. You've got personal access to these people. I would say that following up the person who brought them, I reckon is probably the best thing. So you might be doing this already, but whoever it was, Katie came along to a life course and her friend Beck brought her. Beck's the person you want to be meeting with through that life course. You want to be making sure someone's praying with Beck for her friend Katie. Yeah. You want to be sure, she's coming with Beck, Katie, whoever she is, 2 every week. And in the following weeks, you wanted to follow that up and say, hey, would you come along to church? Yeah. So just in terms of the order that we do things, so we run sort of 2C events, which would be maybe a bonfire. For us, it's a meat feast, smoked meat feast. I don't know what it is.
You love meat, don't you?
You guess?
Yeah, okay, got it.
So we're actually really struggling to, what events can I run for guys that don't involve me? So please send me your ideas. I'm struggling. No, we ran a sourdough making workshop.
Still food related.
It's food related, yeah. But it didn't necessarily have meat. So that sort of big picture, come along, experience the community. Next step, events, 3C, with some sort of a talk. And even at the 3C events, I wouldn't expect someone to be converted from the talk. So the way I think about events, rightly or wrongly, that's the place. I'm not going to convert someone. So I don't think we're in the Billy Graham era now, where people have such an understanding of the gospel that Billy Graham can stand up and people are converted on the spot. Now, God can do that, and I pray that he does. But I think for most people, they're going to need more than even a 30-minute talk to understand the gospel. So I really, in that talk, I want to give them compelling reason to come to life. Yeah. So, and we only run life once a year because we'd rather do it well and less often. So if we're running a 3C event at a different time of the year, I'll run Christianity Explored straight after, or a church easy access series. So that's what we did over Easter this year. We decided not to run life and ran that easy access series. But how do you get people to do it? I think coaching them, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, man. Just pursuing how people are following up, not just asking you, checking off it's being done, but digging deep into it and helping them is a really great thing. So, hope you really enjoyed today, guys. We could probably talk for a lot more about lots of questions and things, and hopefully it stimulated your thoughts. Liam's email is there if you wanted to run anything by him. But thanks for coming along today. You heard the resources from Sam Chan's book and other things as well. There's other learning labs coming up that you may be interested in. I don't know if there's any that you're...
Yeah, there's a couple. We're absolutely locking in for the serving in small churches. I think Scott Curtis is running that one.
Yeah, so, good.
you know, that's an area like, we need to get on top of it. We need some help. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next time.